with The Last Dance on everybody's mind, on everybody's lips. Everybody's wondering what we saw and what else was there. And let's get Ahmad Rashad on, because I don't recall anybody covering an athlete and an era and having a catbird seat position quite like he had on all those years on the NBA on NBC. And he's kind enough to call in the Rich Eisen Show. How you been, Ahmad?
I'm absolutely fantastic. Rich, how are you?
I'm better for talking to you. That's
fantastic.
You know what?
Hey, so wait a minute.
Yes.
Did you hear? I heard the introduction,
Yes.
and I was like, NBC former something. You know, I played football.
Well, Ahmad, right on our screen right here, it's not underneath former NBC sports commentator. It says 4-time Pro Bowl wide receiver with Vikings. You know, I know.
That's what I'm talking about. That makes me feel, when you get old, you need that stuff.
Should we have a last dance on the Vikings, on your Vikings, Ahmad? What would that look like?
No. It's just that. It was one of those things where my daughter at one point came home from school and said, "Hey, there's a kid at school that wants your autograph. He said you played for the Vikings. Did you?"
Come on.
No way.
Come on.
I swear. It was like, okay, maybe I tried too hard to make people forget.
Did your daughter not know you were 4th overall pick in a National Football League draft? Ahmad?
No clue. And if she's listening now, it's probably the first time she's heard that.
No. Is this the same daughter who's killing it on Billions right now, Ahmad?
Absolutely.
She's dynamite, man. She is dynamite.
Oh, thank you.
In that show. Just dynamite. And I guess this is a good segue. Do you think Jordan would have respected you in the manner that he did if you weren't a former athlete coming to him, Ahmad?
No, I don't think so. And you know what, Rich? I think that a lot of the guys would have felt the same way. It's because NBC had not been doing basketball. Then all of a sudden we got the franchise to do basketball. And the guy that they sort of put in from NBC to put in place at the NBA was me.
Mm-hmm.
So we were trying to do things to show that we were knowledgeable about basketball by doing Magic Johnson's Midsummer Night's Dream. We did that just to sort of introduce ourselves to those guys. But I always felt like I got the same sort of reception from all the players.
So when was the first time you met Jordan? When was the first time you met him, shook his hand, covered him, or something like that?
Yeah, the first time I met him was at that Midsummer Night's Dream game out there in L.A.
Mm-hmm.
And we just had that was a time where guys would play in these All-Star games during the summer, and it was a real game. It wasn't like they were out there like Globetrotters or something. They actually really were playing with egos involved. So that was the first time I had met him then, and we just sort of met after the game, talked, and exchanged phone numbers, and saw the rest. In terms of how our relationship developed, it developed from that.
Well, I mean, if there's one thing that anybody learned from this documentary is that anything that Jordan ever played in wasn't just a regular game, right? I mean, that was a real, that's one thing that I'm sure if anybody needed to be introduced to Jordan, and there's a whole generation that did, they just learned that. And I've asked this question of every single person who we've had on this show that either appeared in The Last Dance or has a working knowledge or having covered or is friendly with anybody on the team. I asked this question of you too. Did you learn anything from The Last Dance, Ahmad Rashad?
No, I didn't. I didn't because I think, it's like you said when you introduced me, I had a catbird seat to all of it. And it was one of those different sort of, I've never sort of been in a situation where I had sort of free access to the locker room, to the training room, to their buses, I was just there. So I got a chance to see a lot of those things. But, as a former athlete, I sort of knew about a lot of them too. This was just a little bit closer because there wasn't that many people. But no, I didn't see anything that surprised me. I was glad that people got a chance to see the human side of Michael, and you see how competitive he was and how demanding he was. And I think what I take from that is, if you think Larry Bird wasn't like that, and if you think Magic Johnson wasn't like that, then you're not really thinking the right way. So it wasn't just Michael that was just, win at all costs, put your foot on the guy's neck kind of thing. All these guys were able to do that, but Michael, what separated him was his athletic ability was way above anybody's at that point. So that's, what you saw. But that hard driving leadership thing, I think Magic had that, and I think Larry Bird had that. And there's a lot of guys you can sort of go through the league that had that same sort of lust for winning.
Well, we had Shaq on yesterday, Ahmad, and the sweetheart that Shaq is, and I enjoyed seeing on Twitter this past week of him breaking a backboard on Inside Stuff with you. It was great seeing that from back in that day. A nice little stroll down memory lane there. We had the sweetheart Shaq on yesterday, and I asked him about the subject of Jordan's demeanor and his hard driving, that some of his teammates would grind his gears. And he was insulted. He's like, "You don't think I was that way?" I mean, that's exactly what he said when I brought that up with him.
Yeah, and it's in all sports. When you see guys that you see Tom Brady who smiles and looks like such a nice guy, I guarantee you he is riding them dudes to death on a weekly basis. That's just the way that is.
So now, Ahmad Rashad here on the Rich Eisen Show. What's the scoop with the pizza? Were you in that room when the pizza arrived that night, Ahmad? Were you there?
I was not in the room. I was on the phone, and I knew the pizza had come over. I knew he was eating pizza, and then I knew a few hours later that he had gotten sick.
Okay, so
I knew all that.
You were on the phone when the pizza arrived in the room.
Yeah,
is what you said.
They were getting ready to eat. They were just kind of messing around doing what they're doing, and they were just getting ready to eat, and the pizza came, and we got off the phone, and that was it. Then I found out about 4 hours later that he was sick as a dog.
He called you to basically say, "I'm sick"? He called you?
Well, no, it wasn't him calling me. There's George Kohler. I spoke to George Kohler.
Right.
And George was in the room.
See, now, did you know at the time that it was pizza? Why did we wait? Why did it take 20 years for much of the free world to learn this was a stomach bug or a food poisoning situation?
I don't know. Every time I used to say I'd read something and say it was the flu game. And I'd say, he didn't have the flu. He had food poisoning. I never paid any more attention to it than that. But I remember, isn't that game always referred to as the flu game?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah, I don't remember no flu. I do remember if he had the flu, then how was he playing the piano and doing all that stuff after the game? So I don't think that was it at all.
So, I mean, as always with Jordan, there's always some sort of, one would say a conspiracy theory that he was actually out at night and that he was doing something that he shouldn't have been doing, as opposed to eating the pizza. But what did you report the next day?
I report that he had gotten sick. He had eaten the pizza and he had gotten really, really sick, and he was throwing up and all that kind of stuff. And the funny thing about it is once he started to play, because he kept saying, "I'm going to play." So I said, "Yeah, he's going to play." And I remember them always coming down to me as a sideline reporter and said, "Give us a report on Jordan." So I say, he's sick. He's sick. He had food poisoning. He's sick. And about 5 minutes later, I said, "Give us another report." I'd say, "He's still sick." And then 5 minutes later, I said, "How about another report?" "Yep, he's still sick." So it was one of those things where it was, what else can I say?
Ahmad.
Let's go down to Ahmad. What can I say?
Right.
All I can say is he's sick.
Well, now, I mean, it's just, you want to talk about a unique situation. I mean, you got access to easily the most famous person on the planet, most famous athlete of his time, still one of the most famous people on the planet. You had all that, and then I'm sure there was things going on that you couldn't report on. And what was that balancing act for you, Ahmad?
I never, the things that I was going to report on had to do with basketball. So I never thought like I was holding secrets or anything like that. I mean, my job was to report on the game, report on things that were happening that way. I never even thought about, there was no investigative reporting going on, and there was no reason for that. The other part was just friends. We were just friends, and it wasn't, like you're sneaking around and saying, "What was that? Who are you talking to?" None of that ever went on. And I think that, because of his stature and the mystique around him, that there were so many theories. I think you mentioned this earlier. There were so many theories that we would laugh at. It's just crazy stuff. But I guess they could say whatever they wanted to, but it certainly was not my job to report that.
The only other person,
or even report on it.
No, I know. The only other person that I would know that had great access and became friends with Michael was Stuart Scott. Do you have any good stories about Stuart being around or anything like that, Ahmad?
Oh man, I know you love Stuart. I love Stuart too. What a wonderful man. He just was a lot of fun. He was a lot of fun. He was always up. He always had funny things to play, and it was like he was just one of the guys. He was one of the guys that Stuart would call. He'd be able to call and ask whatever he needed to ask or whatever it was. So it was a very good relationship between Stuart and Michael also.
Yeah, I know.
But Stuart was also reporting things on. His angle was different than mine. He was doing sports news. and doing things like that. I was just reporting on the game.
Right. And then how real is the Isaiah stuff, Ahmad? Is that reason why he wasn't on the dream team?
I think that he was very upset when Isaiah walked off the court. And let me just move on and tell you what happened with Karl Malone.
Okay.
When Karl Malone lost that final game, I remember I just could come out of the locker room and I walked over to the Bulls bus. Karl Malone was walking up the bus, congratulating everybody on that bus, on the Bulls team. Just one of the greatest acts of sportsmanship that I've ever seen. And nobody ever said anything about it. That was Karl doing it from his heart. And, you got to realize that was the second time he had been beaten by him. But I remember watching him walk up on that bus and going through the bus, just, telling everybody congratulations, great game, all that kinds of stuff. That was a pretty cool moment.
Yeah, we saw that.
I never reported that.
Yeah, we saw the video of that on The Last Dance. I saw that. Maybe Karl just knew what happened to Isaiah, and he better shake Michael's hand, and he didn't do it on the court, and he went to go find him because you know what happens. You don't want to be out. You don't want to be out. You don't want to be out forever.
Yeah, well,
could have been that.
Karl Malone's the guy that don't worry about stuff like that.
I guess so.
I think, yeah, because he's so big. But I think the thing with Isaiah, because they had such a rivalry with Detroit, and the fact that, they got to the point where they had those Jordan rules and all those kinds of things, I think that sort of built up a little bit of pressure between them. But as it stands now, I don't think Michael cares much about that. I mean, he says that Isaiah was the second best point guard to ever play in the league. Tremendous respect for the guy. But, you don't have to be, bosom buddies, but he certainly respects him 100%.
I got to tell you, I want to see one more episode of The Last Dance, Ahmad. And here's what I want to see. I want to see only the moments where the director, Jason Hare, handed Michael an iPad for him to see what has been said about him and his reactions to it. That's all I want. The whole episode. And also maybe a camera funny. Or maybe a camera on every single person that knew they said something about Michael in their house, watching Michael get handed this iPad, nervous that they're about to see themselves on it. That's what I want the last episode to be.
That would be great because, he didn't hold back.
No. Gosh, no.
No, he did not hold – he didn't hold back. Some of it shocked me. I was like, whoa, did you really say that?
So maybe you did learn something. Maybe you did learn something from it that he would.
Well, I learned that I already knew what he said, but I was like, you just really said that, huh? Okay, I guess you know what you're doing. I think it's one of those things where, Michael has always said, I've had this tape for a bunch of years. We're going to let it out, and that's it. I'm not going to do any interviews about it. I'm not going to talk about it. He's tired of seeing it now. It's like one of those things where, here, you guys look and you make up your mind, and that's it. I'm not going to stand up and explain any of it. That's just it. Well, and I think that's pretty cool.
Well, that's one of the last two questions I want to ask you, Ahmad, is why? Why do you think he finally decided to say, okay, let's do this? Why do you think he gave this a green light?
I think part of it was as hard as he drove his teammates, he loved each and every one of those guys. And it was it was a story that needed to be told. And the only person that could tell it was him. So if he was the one sitting on the tapes, if he wouldn't have said you can release him, we'd have never saw it. So I think it became time. He became far enough away from it that it was like, okay, here, let's take a look at it. And that's it. Because I think he enjoyed watching it also. But I know that he's not going to answer any questions. We watch it together and laugh. I mean, there's so many, you know how you do when you watch something that you saw it before and you start pointing out different things and just laughing, and it's been a lot of fun, like a high school reunion, kind of, I guess. So
are you saying you watched it together with him or you'd call him up?
Yeah, we sit and Sunday nights we sit and watch it. And we laugh at the stuff and remember the stuff and remember different players like, hey, remember that guy? That dude was tough. He could really go to his left. Or remember that guy? He did this and that and the other. Or whatever happened to that guy? Stuff like that. So it's just all in fun. It's not anything more than that.
So that's
a little bit of tequila, little bit of tequila as you're watching it. Have a good time.
Okay, but nobody ordered a pizza though, right? Ahmad, nobody ordered pizza.
There will be no
more of that.
No one will be delivering pizzas.
Okay. Yeah, just making it yourself. Okay. So then I guess the last, how about that? Okay, so you were, I guess, Jordan sheltered in place and you go over or something like that? Is that how you would watch this?
Well, we live right down the street from each other, so we've all been sheltered.
Okay.
We've been on this, we've been sheltered for the longest time. So,
right.
That's one of that's been one of our Sunday night things, is to go watch the thing.
Well, that's me. I watch it with my wife. You watch it with Jordan. That's the way you're rolling. Okay. Last question for you, Ahmad.
You're having the better time than I am.
Okay. Last one for you. Last one. Did Jordan ever have a meeting with Phil after the final season to say, are we done here? In the same way that Reinsdorf said to Michael after he retired the first time, this is not official and not public until you have a conversation with Phil, please. And then they did, and then they, obviously Phil accepted it, and Michael went and played baseball. So did these two guys ever have a conversation, best to your knowledge, to try and keep this band together in the manner that Jordan said he would have been willing to do?
No, I don't think that ever happened.
Why?
I don't think they had the meeting. I think it was over. And as a fan, if you switch on the fan there, that's a shame. That's a shame that they weren't able to play until they lost.
Huh. See,
but it just was. I think the situation had so much pressure on it at the end. To have the so-called new coach be around the team, and have the general manager kept saying that no matter what you do, this is your last year. It's kind of hard to get past that. You know what I mean? It's hard to work under those circumstances. I give Phil Jackson so much credit for keeping that team together with all those crazy people they had on that team. Yeah. Mainly Dennis and all the other people. To keep all these guys together and have them rally to win a championship is one of the greatest things that I've ever seen a coach do ever. Because I knew the players and I knew the coach, and I know it wasn't just anybody. When you talk about a great coach, it's usually a great manager of men. And Phil Jackson did that better than anyone. I mean, the example in Utah when Rodman went to a wrestling match and missed practice, any other coach would have probably suspended him, or an Indian would have lost the game. But at least Phil was able to make the team understand that Dennis had let him down. You really let us down. We were really trying to rally here, but we're not going to do anything about it. You let us down. You'll feel bad about it. And you realize the next night he went out and got 20 rebounds.
Unbelievable.
So he was a great, great motivator. And Michael says that one of the most important things in his whole career is that he had a coach that challenged him every single day, challenged him to be better, challenged him to be better. I think that's pretty cool. I think that's that's some legendary stuff.
No doubt. That's inside stuff. Hey, now, how about that? Huh? Nice. There you go. That's the inside stuff from Ahmad Rashad.
That's right.
Hey,
wait, I have one question for you.
Okay. What do you got?
What was your time? What was your time in the 40?
Thanks for asking, Ahmad. It was 5.96 this year. 5.96 this year. Right? Or was it 5.99? I might have just beaten it. I don't know. But it was sub 6. I'm a fine wine. Sort of like that stuff that Jordan was drinking on The Last Dance. Or fun. He's drinking his tequila, right? Is that what he's doing? Isn't that?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. What was your 40 time, Ahmad? What was your 40 time?
I ran 4.4.
Damn straight you did. Of course. That's why Bud Grant was all over you, right? Right?
It was a good time. It's been a great life. I've enjoyed every element, every day, all of it. It's all been good.
Absolutely. Hey, Ahmad, maybe we'll have you on in a couple weeks. Let's talk football. How about that? Nothing but football.
Oh, that'd be fun, Rich. I'd like that.
I'd love it too. Thanks for the call, Ahmad.
Okay.
Appreciate you catching up. Look, I'll reach out and you take care of yourself. Be happy and be safe.
Okay, you do the same. You do the same thing.
You got it. That's Ahmad Rashad right here on the Rich Eisen Show. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.